everybody, this is Dr. Schroeder with this week's video introduction to week number 6 in our course in evidence-based practice. And for week number 5, it was a fairly straightforward week of discussion. The primary task this week was to read about and be introduced to the variety of evaluation models that we have whenever we're talking about implementing some new process or some new evidence-based practice. And each one of you has selected the model that you feel best fits your particular issue or your particular organization or your particular evidence-based practice project or procedure, intervention, critical pathway. You know, there's many different, all of you are in different places for the kind of projects that you're actually discussing implementing, or at least going through this mock plan of implementing. But this is an important part, and starting in this week, we really have been focusing on taking that information that you worked on the first part of class, which was identifying what would be the best evidence-based practice to use to either settle or address a particular issue or problem. And then starting this week is the discussion about how do we oversee that, or how do we implement that? And we're going to continue that in week 6. In week number 6, you are going to be taking that, your PICO, and taking the work that you've done thus far. You've identified your PICO, you've done your literature review, you've basically come to the assessment or the conclusion that yours is the best practice to address a particular need. And so now we're going to talk about how we're going to implement that. And this is an important part. And this is oftentimes where these kind of projects break down, because coming up with a great project or a great plan is great, but if it doesn't get followed through with, if it isn't implemented properly, it's not going to have the intended consequences, and then therefore the organization is not going to realize any benefit from it. So in this week, basically there's two parts to the discussion question. The first is that you're going to be identifying a SMART objective or a SMART goal that you're going to use for your particular PICO. And the way to look at it is to kind of sort of frame it this way. You're going to be taking your new evidence-based practice project. You've come up with a new intervention, you know in your mind what you want it to be, and now you're going to have to actually put it into a plan where you're going to be implementing it in your facility. And you're going to be teaching it to the staff and to the stakeholders that are going to be affected by it. And you're going to have to then anticipate maybe what some of the barriers are going to be, or what some of the obstacles might be. Essentially, you're going to have to sell it. And here we're going to start this process of learning how do you sell something like this. So a SMART objective is, SMART is an acronym that is used quite often in quality management, and although the terms are a little bit different from organization to organization, essentially they break down into this, is that the S stands for specific. You're coming up with something that is, you're coming up with a specific outcome, a specific goal that is measurable, the measurable, observable. We've been talking about all along. That's why this is kind of why I've been trying to get everybody to really sort of think about and give you feedback about what are you going to measure, what are you going to look at, what are you going to measure to see if you met your goal. It has to be achievable, which means that everybody in the organization has to agree to it. It is going to be something that everybody says that yes, this is what we want, and that is relevant or realistic or reasonable, or there's other terms that can, to fit into that R part of the acronym, but essentially, is it something that is, or how can you make it realistic and workable for your organization? And then how is it time frame, or what is the trackability? How are you going to track it? This kind of, the T in the SMART acronym relates back to the T in your PICO. How long are you going to be looking at this, and how long is it going to take you to implement this entire process? And so the SMART acronym is, as I said, it's an important tool. It's one that is very well known to those that work in the quality management and the utilization world, and you're being introduced to it here because it's something that is a nurse leader and a potential manager, or even an individual that is going to be identifying and researching evidence-based practice, is something that you have to really be thinking about the whole time that you're going through this process. And so Then the second part of the discussion question is going through and identifying what do you see as the barriers, what are the obstacles, and how are you going to address those. And again, a very important piece. And these are also important pieces of your evidence-based practice part 2 projects that are due this week. So those will be due by Sunday. Of course, as always, your initial discussion questions will be due by Wednesday, with your responses due by Saturday. Sunday's kind of an off day, sort of, and although I sometimes grade on Sundays. And then we'll be starting up in week 7 at the end of this week. So that's pretty much our week in a nutshell, the task of which that you're looking at right now. For your grading, please know that your grades for this week should be done sometime by the middle of the week. I don't think it should take me too long to grade the discussion questions, so sometime around Wednesday, I'm guessing I will probably have them done, although it may be done sooner than that. It just depends on when I can sit down for a couple hours and actually do that this week. But it will be sometime before midweek, I would imagine. Also, I am hoping that we have completely got our Blackboard issue resolved. We had an issue with Blackboard campus-wide where students were unable to review and see the feedback from instructors, so I got a couple of semi-panicked and rather urgent emails from people asking, can you please re-review my paper because I can't see my feedback. And so when I started getting that kind of feedback, the thought of me going back and reviewing 16 papers again to give you feedback didn't appeal to me too much. So I sent a message to Blackboard, and they, I believe, have got everything straightened out by now. So you should be able to see my feedback from that evidence-based practice part 1. Very important you review that, because that's going to give you some clues as to what you need to do for this particular assignment. So with that, I bid you all well. I hope that you are having a great end of summer. Now we're into fall. Those of you that are baseball fans, I hope that your baseball team has made it into the playoffs. If you're not a baseball fan, if you're a hockey fan, we're starting to gear up. And if you're a football fan, same thing. We're kind of sort of like getting in bed. If you're not a sports fan at all, well, a lot of us aren't. I'm kind of a baseball, hockey fan myself, but be that as it may, I hope that your teams are doing well, or that your teams do well this season, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video response. Please let me know if you have any questions, and we will see you in the discussion forums.